The Democrats are introducing framework on the Green New Deal.
The Green New Deal.
The Green New Deal. An environmental group called the Sunrise Movement.
They call themselves the Sunrise Movement.
Bring it on, Koch brothers, because we have an activated sunrise revolution that's taking place.
We have 12 years to radically transform our economy and our society to stop this crisis and protect human civilization as we know it. We'll talk about it like that because that's what it is.
This is not about Republican. This is not about Democrat. This is about humanity. That's why we demand a new Green Deal, and we demand it right now.
Thank you for being here. My name is Varshini Prakash. I am one of the co-founders of and the executive director of Sunrise Movement. And we are here for a super special last tour stop at the road to the Green New Deal. Thank you for making it here tonight. We launched this incredible tour like a month ago in Boston to a sold-out audience. And on that exact same day that we launched in Boston, an 18-year-old held a Green New Deal town hall in Santa Fe, New Mexico. And she got the fourth most powerful Democrat in Congress, Ben Lujan, to endorse the Green New Deal resolution at that town hall. And she got the mayor of Santa Fe, New Mexico, to agree to pledge to pass a citywide Green New Deal plan. An 18-year-old, amazing. New York City passed a citywide Green New Deal as well, and that was just the first day. From there, we went to Detroit, Michigan, and teamed up with local leaders who are doing incredible work. Detroit for a Green New Deal is real, and it is happening with people like Congresswoman Rashida Tlaib at the helm. We went to Iowa, and we heard from farmers and indigenous communities that are fighting corporate ag in their state. We went to LA and then to Chico and Paradise, California. Paradise, California, a place that has been razed to the ground because of the fires in the West. Where there were 20,000 people, there are now just 1,500 in that town. And we got to meet the incredible leaders who are rising up from the ashes and fighting back. From Chico and Paradise, we went to New Orleans and teamed up with Black and local leaders who have been fighting to rebuild after Hurricane Katrina for the last decade and a half. That's right. And just yesterday, I took the long drive back from Kentucky to be here in DC. Kentucky was an incredible stop as well. We heard from coal miners, former coal miners who are now working in the renewable energy industry. We met tons of young people who have been leading the fight against politicians like Mitch McConnell, who have sold out our generation to the highest bidder. But I'll tell you, it is 15, 16, and 17-year-olds in that state that are standing up and saying, hell no. So I'm so excited to be here in DC with all of you as our last stop. But as we've been on this journey, there have been over 250 town halls taking place in communities across America, from Kansas to Missouri to Alaska to Pennsylvania to California, Washington. In every single state, young people are gathering their communities and telling people about the Green New Deal and spreading the message across America. So tonight, before we get things kicked off, I want you all to take a second to get to know a couple people around you. Maybe meet some folks you've never met before and say, hey, hi, hello, how are you doing? Could we get the house lights up, please? All right, bring it back now, y'all. Wow, that was good. So before we get started into the evening, I want to just acknowledge that we are here on Piscataway tribe land. I want us to take a second to remember that this land was taken, that it is not ours, and that people lived here for generations, thousands of years. They lived, they loved, they grew food, they had families, and they existed on this land that we are upon right now. And many are not here anymore because of colonization. So I would love for us to just take 30 seconds of personal silence to just remember and honor the original keepers of this land. Thank you. So I want to actually bring out, before we even get started into our main program, I want to bring out Carrie Fulton, who is based right here at Howard. She's at the Environmental Studies program and alum, the class of 07, and is also the founder of checktheweather.net. So I would like to invite Carrie to come out here. You there?
How y'all doing? Oh my. Ain't you? Ooh, okay. We here. That makes me happy. I was worried. But I do want to take a moment as we talk about grounding in space. Howard University is known as the Mecca for a lot of reasons. If Howard University wanted to run its own country, we could. Harvard is the white Howard. And as many of you may or may not know, we just had a new class that crossed over and graduated on Mother's Day weekend. Fabulous, right? So when the good folk at Sunrise asked me if I wanted to come and do an introduction, I was like, dope. I should go and find a Howard alumni sweater. Not gonna happen this week. Right? But I got the colors, right? When I was here at undergrad at Howard University, we had recycling rooms with no bins. And now today we have an interdisciplinary environmental studies program. We have composting, we have community gardens, we have all of these different things. And that comes from the collective work of the student body. We also have been in the news a little bit, right? Maybe you've heard some things. Anybody walk on the grass? No? Don't do that. Okay. Thanks so much. But that is because we stand and we build on a foundation that's much bigger than the 16 or so years since I was in undergrad, right? Or however long. Don't ask me about my math right now. But that legacy is deeply ingrained not only in Washington, D.C., but also the foundation of our country. So when we think about building and creating a Green New Deal, I want you to sit with what that truly means. My people were enslaved in the Industrial Revolution. My ancestors were killed for your oil. We stand on sacred ground and we talk about the Piscataways. We talk about the indigenous roots of Washington, D.C. Why is the Anacostia named the Anacostia? Why is the Potomac named the Potomac? And we also have to think about, why is Anna J. Cooper Circle called Anna J. Cooper Circle? And understanding that as we continue to grow, and as we continue to build up our cities, we must be respectful of those who are there. Diversity is not an afterthought if we're really trying to build collective liberation. How many people live in D.C.? As you move around this city, get on beat or move out the way. Those drums that you hear in a go-go beat, those are the drums that came from us on the boats. Those are the drums that came with us during powwows. Those are drums of revolution. So if you live here and you believe in collective liberation and you believe in a Green New Deal, how many people in this room want to see a future that is built on renewable, clean, just energy and technology. How many people in here understand what it truly means to say that Black lives matter? And how many of you know that they are interconnected? You cannot build a future change the world in your soft circle. Walk out of your tribe. Talk to someone you don't agree with. Not to argue, just to listen. Understand that this bubble that we live in DC, is nothing like the rest of the world at all. Sit your first world problems down. Sit your Montgomery County problems down. Sit your Noma problems down. How many people came from Noma? All right. How many people came from Columbia Heights? Right? Petworth? Shots out. And ground yourself. And the last thing I'm going to say is short, but it's important. When you walk back to Anna J. Cooper Circle, go back to the early 1900s. There were two separate areas. One area was called Howard Town, and that's where the students and faculty of Howard University lived. Then there was another gated-off community known as LaDroit Park. And that was built for affluent white people. And they built that gate to keep us out, right next door. While I was at Howard, as I was preparing to graduate, I saw that gate come up again. And it sits on the corner of Florida and I think, Fifth Ave, maybe? Welcoming you to LaDroit Park. And in that same time period, I also saw the prices of housing go up dramatically. And I saw Black people who built this neighborhood, who are ingrained in this city, being pushed out. That is not what we want. But in the early 1900s, some Howard students, they got together and they collectively broke down that gate one day. And that neighborhood just began to diversify. And more Black people moved into LaDroit Park. And it changed the dynamics of the neighborhood. I encourage you to not wait to break that gate down. Don't wait for me to break the gates down. Break it in your own communities. Go back to your communities and think about intentional diversity. Think about what it means to build intentionally with a thought of climate justice. And climate justice is not just saying, I want clean energy. Climate justice means I want Peyton to be free. Climate justice means I want to see a world that is better than this. Climate justice means I want to see a world where children are not separated from their families. Climate justice also means I want to be radical in the actions I take locally. I want to think not just on a macro level of injustice, but my own personal ways of how I further exploit my own privilege. My time is up, but I love y'all.
Thank you so much, Carrie. Thank you.
And I have to do this because I've never seen Crampton Auditorium with this many white people in it. So can I get it? Ooh. All right, y'all. Ciao.
Wow. Thank you so much, Carrie. I appreciate the grounding, but also you issuing a challenge to us to do better and do more to actually create a multiracial movement for change. So I'm really grateful for that, and thank you. So for those of you who don't know what Sunrise is building a movement led by young people to stop climate change and create millions of good jobs in the process. And we launched this vision, this movement in 2017 with a really simple vision: to make climate action rooted in racial and economic justice a priority for the first time in our nation's history. Now, I was born and raised outside of Boston, Massachusetts, and I currently live in a place called East Boston. And that's a place where if we don't take action the next couple of decades, we'll cease to exist and will be lost to the seas forever. I'm also the child of 2 South Indian immigrants. And India is a place that is being completely devastated by the climate crisis. Just last fall, I watched as over 1 million people were displaced and put in refugee camps in their own state where my family's ancestral homelands are because of climate-fueled monsoon seasons. And I'm here because I believe that no person should ever have to live in fear of losing the people that they love or the places that they call home due to crises that are preventable. So we launched Sunrise out of that moral conviction and that moral outrage that we felt. At first, we were just a dozen or so of people. Then we were tens and hundreds, then thousands, tens of thousands, and now we are hundreds of thousands strong all across this great nation. And remember, 6 months ago, no one at the national level was talking about the climate crisis. Do y'all remember that? Wow. So we took action 1 week after the November midterms to set the demands for the newly elected Congress and say that they must support climate action in the 116th Congress. And we were joined by the youngest Congresswoman in the history of America, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. And we just realized this a couple days ago, but today marks the exact 6-month anniversary of that action. 6 months ago, there were just 20 local chapters of Sunrise. As of last week, now there are over 200, and that is because of the organizing that we are doing in our communities. 6 months ago, just a handful of politicians were talking about climate change. Now, there are over 100 co-sponsors on a resolution put forward by Ocasio-Cortez and Senator Markey. Almost every single presidential candidate is forced to talk about climate change. We probably talked more about the climate crisis in the first 2 months of 2019 than we did in the entirety of the last 2 presidential elections combined. And that is because of what you are doing. That is because you called and you tweeted like your life depended on it. That is because you are sitting in, because you are standing up, because you are in every town across America demanding a Green New Deal. That is because of what we are doing together. So thank you. Thank you for being here tonight. And we're going to kick things off as we always do at Sunrise with some stories.
My name is Ray Norton, and I'm 18 years old. This is how climate change and pollution has affected me. One of my most distinct memories growing up in Detroit is going south on I-75. Smelling the pollution coming from Marathon and seeing the smoke and the fire on the freeway. I remember trying to hold my breath as long as I could, but eventually you have to breathe in. I've lived in Detroit my whole life. We bounced around a lot when I was a kid. We couldn't always afford to pay rent, and neither could a lot of my friends and family. I know that the planet is on a path towards destruction, and I know that it's caused by the same people who produce the smells and the smoke on the freeway. Poor people, minorities, and young people like me are facing violence and threats in our lives every day from a system that treats us like resources to be extracted.
So this is my old neighborhood. The wall that separates Detroit and Grosse Pointe over there was a big site for dumpers. Like business owners usually would come and you would see them dumping their trash, their tires, or roof shingles. These houses are all built, 50, some of them even 100 years ago across the city, and all of them are built with the methods of, asbestos, lead. In our own house, we had lead paint chips, and whenever these houses get knocked down and burned down, the neighborhood is affected by that. We breathe that air in.
I see these forces of oppression so clearly. I've come to realize, like a lot of young people, that it's our economy. An economy ruled by profit. An economy that needs our environment to be disposable and needs people to be disposable. At the same time, I was seeing videos of young people across the country going to their elected officials and demanding action on the climate and pollution. I was arrested with other activists for sitting in at Nancy Pelosi's office and demanding a Green New Deal. Our generation is sick of a system that leaves us with no future and no hope for a better life. It's not you and me that has to change. It's the system that allows companies, shareholders, and billionaires to destroy our planet. The Sunrise Movement, to me, is about elevating young people to fight on the front lines of building a new, more just, more fair future. I've lived in pollution, in poverty, in climate change my whole life. As long as those things exist, I'll continue to struggle.
My whole life, my family was the thing that had gotten me through. Family was everything. And one thing about my mom, she was always making choices. Perhaps most difficult of all, when she decided to drive towards a raging wildfire on November 8th of 2018. I had gotten up early to study for a test, and my mom had sent me some pictures of the mountain. She had been working her early morning job when she spotted a strange-looking sunrise over the mountains in the direction of Paradise. She raced up the hill to rescue my brother, who was still sleeping. She drove as she saw a wall of black smoke engulfing the trees. There was a time during all of this in which I lost contact with my family for several hours. I was scouring every local Facebook page I knew of, searching for answers. My mind was racing. What if they didn't survive? I couldn't even cry. I thought back to my life growing up in a small town. The dance studio where I'd taken my first ballet class. The Starbucks we had waited for years to avoid driving to Chico for our caffeine fix. Yesterday, when I saw it for the first time, or 2 days ago, I spent like 20 minutes. I walked all the way around to find the steps over there to make sure this was the right place. Because I was like, is this it? Like, I don't even know. I couldn't even tell.
Wow. And so this was like a small business that someone owned in this community, right?
Yeah.
What was it called?
Northern California Ballet. You can see where the bars used to be, actually. Look on the wall, those things.
Really?
Where the bars used to hang. The ones that were connected to the wall. It's just crazy, the destruction that happened. Because I spent so much of my time here for so long.
Yeah.
It's been almost 6 months since the fire, and people are getting angry. I mean, there's not enough FEMA trailers. I think they said they're bringing in 5 a day, and there's thousands and thousands of people displaced by this fire. Yeah. And the resources are very minimal.
Yeah.
And relocating is really hard right now. Chico has no housing available, no jobs available. So a lot of people are stuck here. To get a trailer right now, people are excited to get a trailer.
Wow.
I mean, that's how some people are still living in tents, and a lot of people are homeless. And the thing about Paradise, too, is it was a very poor community. So people didn't have money to begin with, and this just devastated them.
Yeah.
The town I had known, through good and bad, was gone, replaced by ashes. Now, more than ever before, my family had to learn to stick together. Still, life goes on. Every week, I see my mom. We share vegan nachos. Every week, I go to sunrise meetings to fight for a cause that this fire led me to. I am tired of our representatives, of the people who are supposed to be fighting for our best interests, who are supposed to be protecting our families, allowing big fossil fuel companies to control their positions on issues that pertain to our lives and to our futures. The Green New Deal is not just about structural changes in our economy or our political system or our cultural dynamics. We are standing up and saying enough is enough. We are standing up because we have no other choice. We are fighting for our towns. We are fighting for our futures. We are fighting for our families, and we are fighting for our lives.
We got a chance to meet both Ray and Michaela on the road to the Green New Deal, and I will say I am changed forever by their stories. And I think what they remind me of is that this fight isn't about greenhouse gases or parts per million or carbon in the atmosphere. It's about people. It's about our lives. It's about the air that we breathe, the water we drink, our food, the fear we have, the hope we feel. I'd love for everyone to take a second and talk to somebody next to you and ask them, what are you fighting to protect? What are you fighting to protect? And if we could get the house lights on, that would be great. Thank you. Okay, and if you haven't let the other person talk yet, maybe consider switching. If you haven't let the other person talk yet, maybe consider switching. Okay, bring it back. Bring it back, bring it back. Okay. What are you all fighting for? Clean air. Our lives. My friends. Our future. Winters. I'm not fighting for that. Biodiversity. Our future. Thanks, Havana. Refusing corporate money. Oceans. Justice. Black women. Black girl magic. Thank you. Stopping wars for those who can't. Wow, thank you, everybody. Avocados. Those are important. All right, thank you, everybody. So when we talk about the Green New Deal, we're really discussing a plan that's at the intersection of climate, race, and the economy. And there is no person I trust better to talk about all of that than our next speaker, Judith Howell. Judith grew up in the civil rights movement in New York City. She works as a security officer in a commercial office building in Washington, D.C., where she is a member of the Service Employees International Union 32BJ Local. They're the best. She is a lifelong activist, a shop steward, a member political organizer, and now is an elected member of the executive board of SEIU 32BJ. Please give a very warm welcome to Judith.
You're looking good out there. You're looking good. I want you all to see my shirt. I want you to respect security. Shout out to all my security officers in here. Want to also shout out all my 32BJ members here at Howard University. And let them know that those of us that work in private commercial real estate, we got your back. Good evening. As you know, and thank you, Arshini. My name is Judith Howell, and as a night shift security officer, my duties include keeping multi-million-dollar office buildings safe. Now, each building is a mini environment with a plethora of issues that can waste money, affect profits, hurt tenants and their employees, and the business operations. And in my 16 years, I've seen firsthand the damage that can occur from wear and tear, lack surveillance, poor construction, improper waste, improper chemical storage, fire, and water. Water leaks. I am a proud member of 32BJ, of the Service Employees International Union, SEIU. And I'm here today, and I'm with you here tonight, because I'm gravely concerned about our larger environment, planet Earth. It's our spaceship. This is it, okay? The fight for climate justice is critically important to my union. We believe that working people can and must be a part of the process of reversing climate change. Climate advocacy is not new for us. 32BJ is a part of the People's Climate Movement. We're also a longtime member of the Blue-Green Alliance, and my union has an award-winning Green Supers training program. And if you don't know what a super is, you didn't grow up in New York City like I did. We also are currently working with allies and property owners to pass green building legislation in New York City. That's because the building owners there don't want to see the water rise and take away their properties, right? Yeah. My union understands that without this ambitious goal, the Green New Deal, the political will won't exist to force corporations to change their behavior. Big oil, big coal, gas frackers and their lobbyists scare their workers into believing that change will ruin their livelihoods and take their jobs. Nothing could be further from the truth. The truth be told, big business and their Republican minions, they don't care that communities who have done the least to cause climate change, the working poor, people of color, displaced immigrants, are disproportionately hurt the most. Because, in fact, it's the poor and the sick, many sickened by the pollutants that contribute to climate change, who are the least equipped to deal with bad air, increased heat waves, and rising sea levels. But folks, the greedy never care about the needy. I just was reading in the Express, we got an obsolete missile that it would take $1 billion to launch, that both Musk and Bezos got private corporation missiles that only take $68 million to launch. God knows how much we've spent on this missile, and the Republican senator from that area says, oh, but our jobs. Take the billion and the 68 million and create some jobs in solar, in wind, in water, in taking care of our children, in taking care of our health and wellness. Take that money and put it there. The greedy will never care about the needy. As we look to 2020, when we, the people, vote, we must remember what the scientist and author Rachel Carson told us in her book, The Silent Spring. Quote, we are challenged as humankind has never been challenged before, to prove our maturity and our mastery, not of nature, but of ourselves, end quote. We must elect to the White House, the Congress, the state houses, the county and city councils, individuals committed to change our energy sourcing from fossil fuels and these other methods that are destroying our planet to clean energy ones. Solar, wind, water, steam. Do it now, later will be too late. And colleagues, don't argue and debate this issue. That is a tactical diversion we don't have time for. It is a designed waste of time, energy, and focus. And I learned the importance of focus in part from the movie Mad Max 2, Thunderdome. It's the theme song. And I want you to think about the conditions we're living in this world right now, conditions we're living in this country right now. And I quote, we don't need another hero. We don't need to know the way home. It's underwater anyway. All we need is what's beyond Thunderdome. Brothers and sisters, fellow human beings, HUE-men beings, fossil fuels and the environment-destroying agricultural and manufacturing techniques are our Thunderdome. Beyond Thunderdome is hope for our planet Earth. Clean air, clean water, clean energy jobs. As we bring this hope that is beyond, as we implement climate change, I have no doubt our planet will respond. It will begin to heal itself. And this struggle will heal us. It'll heal our bodies. It'll heal our mindsets. It'll heal our societies. It will heal our focus and give us a beautiful spaceship for generations to come.
Judith, is Judith still back there? I'll tell her she's getting a standing ovation right after this. Isn't she amazing? Thank you so much, Judith. She tears it up every single time I hear her. I can hear her talk all day. So as Carrie grounded us in the beginning, this fight is national, but it's got to start and be led by local. And with that, I want to introduce Jeremiah Lowry to the stage. Maybe I don't have to introduce Jeremiah Lowry. Jeremiah has over 10 years of experience in organizing and volunteer mobilization. He's been instrumental in moving progressive policies forward in DC, including paid sick leave, ban the box, and raising the minimum wage. He's also passionate about climate and sits on the board of the DC Sierra Club. And Jeremiah ran for DC Council at large in the 2018 primary election. So give it up for Jeremiah.
Oh my goodness. Can we quickly give another round of applause for Judith? I thought that was absolutely amazing. Judith is a perfect example of the individuals we need leading this movement and on the front lines. I've been seeing Judith at protests, at rallies, at conventions. She's been putting in the work. She's a beautiful human being, and I just want to really give more recognition to Judith and the work that she's done on the front lines for the climate change movement over the past few years. So one more round of applause for Judith. And also, quickly, before I get into my speech, I'd be remiss without saying I'm rocking a Washington, D.C. shirt. So I want to give a shout out to D.C. statehood. I can't give a speech to a crowd this large without mentioning how important it is for Washington, D.C. to have statehood so we can have a representative on the front lines fighting for climate change. Growing up in the Washington, D.C. area, living in public housing near an industrial part of the city, my brothers and I would play outside in air that was thick with pollutants and play in creeks that were also in poor health due to runoff. Our urban environment promised too many youth growing up high asthma rates and water that many of us couldn't drink in full confidence. And that is why I am in a movement for a Green New Deal. When we became adults, two of my brothers struggled with unemployment, oftentimes ending up in and out of the prison system due to crimes of poverty and survival. And that is why I am in the movement for a Green New Deal. I believe that with the Green New Deal, we can employ people like my brothers through the green economy to build the systems and communities that allow us to breathe the air without fear of harmful pollutants, drink the water without worrying about the negative effects on our bodies, and play outside, grow outside, and just be outside in all cities, towns, and communities across America without environmental distress. And it's possible, y'all. It's possible because I've seen a possibility on a local level. Last year in Washington, D.C., a coalition of labor unions, advocates, and community members organized and pushed the D.C. Council to pass a bill that will move D.C. towards a 100% clean energy city. And guess what? Every member of the D.C. Council voted for it. So if we can utilize people power to move our city towards 100% clean energy, then we can use the same power, the same energy to hold down the fort here in Washington, D.C. When there is a call to show up, to protest, and to fight on the front lines for the Green New Deal, we, the residents of D.C., don't need to fly in. We don't need to bus in from another city. We are right here. All we need to do is take the subway, bike, or walk to the Capitol and show up and fight for a Green New Deal. So I encourage everyone in the room to get involved, to get your organizations involved, to get your local community groups involved, to get your unions involved, to get your neighbors involved in this movement alongside Sunrise. Because we know that the overwhelming majority of D.C. residents fully support the Green New Deal, and we have to make sure Congress knows and sees our collective power. Because there will be pushback. There's going to be some pushback. Oh, yes, there will be pushback. Here in Washington, D.C., when we organized for strong legislation to push D.C. towards a 100% clean energy city, corporate groups fought back hard. They pushed back hard. And whenever we start to organize for other transformative environmental policies, they continue to push back hard. So as the Green New Deal fight continues to heat up, as we fight for a strong and equitable Green New Deal that includes full employment, 100% clean energy, and no, I repeat, no fossil fuel production. Can I get the audience to shout no for no fossil fuel production? Okay. That's what I'm talking about. There will be pushback from corporate interests and even politicians who tell you they want to water down your bills to seek a middle ground with corporate lobbyists. Boo! I see the audience doesn't like a middle ground, right? We don't like a middle ground. There ain't no middle ground in this audience, right? But if we continue to organize and build diverse coalitions centered on environmental justice, our beautiful movement will have the transformative Green New Deal that is needed for our communities and planet. I want to thank the Sunrise Movement for giving me this opportunity to speak today. I'm one of many people who have been following their work to see so many youth of all backgrounds rise up and organize for a transformative, unapologetic, revolutionary Green New Deal has brought tears of joy to my eyes. It continues to inspire me and reinforce my belief that our organizing is worth it, that our lives are worth it, that we will win, and the conditions that my family faced were only temporary, because our movement will change the planet for the better, and the sunrise is on the horizon for all of us. Thank y'all so much. I love you.
Thank you so much, Jeremiah. Wow, that was amazing. So this next person needs very little introduction. I am so excited to invite Senator Ed Markey, one of the... the original co-sponsor of the Green New Deal resolution in the Senate, partnered with the Representative Ocasio-Cortez in the House, and who has been a climate advocate for decades. So please give a warm welcome to Senator Markey.
Thank you, Varshini. Thank you all so much. Varshini is like a one-word wonder now, like Beyonce. You just have to say Varshini. Just a phenomenal leader, helping to organize across our whole country. And I know she'll be addressing the crowd later tonight, but I want to thank my fantastic partner on the Green New Deal resolution, Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. When she and I first met back in December last year to talk about working together, I could see her vision for our country, one that puts people ahead of profits, one that fuels our economy with clean energy, not dirty pollution. I am so thankful for her leadership, for her passion, for her friendship. She is a true climate warrior and an inspiration, not just for the Congress, but for an entire generation. And of course, thanks to all of you here tonight, the climate, clean energy, environmental, social justice, public health, and grassroots fighters that make up the most powerful movement organizing in the United States today. You are lifting up the gaze of our country to the constellation of possibilities for our communities, for our nation, and for the world. That is what the Sunrise Movement is doing. And advocates in blue and red states are demanding that leaders commit to real action on climate change now. And I'll tell you why it's important for you to be here today. Nearly a century ago, young women did not have the right to vote. Young women created a suffragette movement. They organized and they got the right to vote. When African Americans did not have the right to vote a generation ago, young people rose up and African Americans got the right to vote. Young people rose up to demand that gay marriage be made legal, and it is today. This generation of young people, your generation, is rising up and demanding that we protect the planet against the greatest challenge of our time, climate change. And in the face of the opposition, in the face of climate denier-in-chief Donald Trump, in the face of critics and naysayers, you are not going to agonize, you are going to organize. That is what is putting fear into the hearts of the fossil fuel industry across our entire country. You will lead the movement that implements the solutions to end the catastrophe that is endangering the planet. Never in our history have the interests of all Americans been so united in a single issue: climate change. From the air we breathe, to the jobs that employ us, to the neighborhoods that we live in, to the economy we operate within. Climate change defines our existence. The United States Climate Assessment says without significant mitigation, the increase in global annual average temperatures could reach 9 degrees Fahrenheit higher by 2100, with sea levels 11 feet higher. Global temperatures are already the highest in recorded history. Wealth inequality is at its highest point since the era of the Great Depression. The erosion of our coastlines, the erosion of earning power of workers, the pollution of our planet, the pollution of our democracy by big oil and the Koch brother financing, The interrelationship of these ills and injustices is undeniable, but the challenge is not insurmountable. It will only be through an historic, generational commitment to end climate change that we create the kind of democracy that works for all Americans. We can deliver a Green New Deal for America. So what are we talking about when we talk about a Green New Deal? When we talk about a Green New Deal, we are talking about jobs and justice. We are talking about the greatest blue-collar job creation program in a generation. We are talking about repairing the historic oppression of frontline and vulnerable communities, which have borne the worst burdens of our fossil fuel economy. We are talking about justice for the Black and Latino families who breathe different air than white Americans have been breathing. The Green New Deal is about creating an historic 10-year mobilization that will mitigate climate emissions and build climate resiliency. We need massive renewable energy deployment, wind, solar, offshore wind, storage batteries. Our energy future will not be found in the dark of a mine, but in the light of the sun. We know the answer. We can create high-quality jobs and enforce labor standards, guarantee rights to retirement security and health care, and conduct inclusive decision-making. We can engage in job creation that is good for all of creation. That is what the Green New Deal is all about. Now, the critics have lined up to take their shots at the Green New Deal. Totally bogus stories about ice cream and hamburgers and airplanes. They call the Green New Deal pie in the sky. They call it socialism. But what about the oil and gas industry tax breaks that are a permanent part of the tax code, some of which have been on the books for over 100 years. But Republicans only call it socialism when we try to help the things we like. So here's what I say for wind and solar and all-electric vehicles and clean energy. Give us some of that socialism that the oil and gas industry has had for a century. Republicans, they don't like the Green New Deal because they don't like functioning government. Republicans don't like the Green New Deal because they don't like change. Republicans don't like the Green New Deal because clean energy jeopardizes the bottom line of their biggest contributors. Big oil, big coal, the Koch brother Republican, and the Koch brothers backers may not believe climate change is an existential threat to humankind, but they do believe and they know that the goals of the Green New Deal are an existential threat to the business model of the Koch brothers and all of their corporate polluters and fossil fuel allies. And are we afraid? Oh, no, 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 no. Remember the old saying, first they ignore you, then they laugh at you, then they fight you, then you win. And we are going to win this fight. Because on every one of these issues, from health care to reproductive rights to gun safety to immigration to climate change, there is one thing that separates those special interests from you. You are right and they are wrong on every one of those issues. This is the moral, the national security, public health, economic, and environmental issue of our time. We have acted on this scale before, and we must do so again. We have the technology to do it. We have the moral obligation to do it. We have the economic imperative to do it. We just need the political will. And that is where you come in, because the Green New Deal isn't just a resolution. The Green New Deal is a revolution that is taking place in this country. The sun is setting on the dirty energy of the past. Today marks the dawn of a new era of climate action. Just look at the sunrise. So are you ready to rise up for that victory that we are going to have? Are you ready to rise up and take on the oil and gas and coal and fossil fuel industries? Are you ready to rise up for wind and solar and clean energy, all electric vehicles? Will you go out and make this happen for our country? Are you ready for this fight against the strongest political force we have ever seen in our history? Are you ready to fight? Let us go out there and win this war for every person who lives on our planet. Thank you all. Thank you, Sunrise. Thank you for your leadership.
Whoa! Thank you. It sounds like you guys are ready for a political revolution. Let me begin by thanking the Sunrise Organization for all of the great work you are doing. And let me thank the young people of this country for leading the effort against climate change. And let me thank Howard University for hosting us on this beautiful campus. And let me thank all of the HBCU students who have done a great job to help solve the climate crisis through HBCU Climate Consortium. Thank you guys very much. And let me just say this, that unlike the President of the United States, you know that climate change is not a hoax, but is an existential threat to our country and the entire planet, and you are prepared to stand up and fight back. Thank you. You know, and I know, that the scientific community has been very clear, and that is that if we do not act boldly and aggressively to transform our global energy system away from fossil fuel within the next few years, a very short period of time, there will be irreparable harm done to our planet. And we are united in saying we will not allow that to happen. And what the scientists are telling us is that if we do not act boldly and dramatically, there will be more rising sea levels, more flooding, more droughts, more extreme weather disturbances, more acidification of the oceans, and more declines in crop production. You also know that intelligence and defense agencies in the United States and all over the world see climate change as a major national security issue. Because if people cannot grow the crops they need, if people cannot find clean water to drink, there will be massive migrations of people all over the world, which will put increased pressure on limited natural resources and cause international havoc and war. Climate change is a global issue. It impacts not only the United States, but China and Russia and India. It impacts Latin America, Africa, and the entire planet. And let me be very clear. It is absolutely imperative that we have American leadership that does everything possible to bring the nations of the world together to transform our energy system away from fossil fuel into energy efficiency and sustainable energies. And I want you to think about the potential that is out there. Instead of spending well over $1 trillion a year on weapons of destruction, think about spending that money on making this planet healthy and habitable. And maybe, just maybe, we might get countries all over the world to give up on their selfish ambitions and understand that bringing the world together to solve this crisis is more important than killing each other. And that means that the United States must lead the world with a global approach which emphasizes the Green New Deal. And when we do that, we not only address the great environmental crisis of our time, but we create millions of good-paying jobs as we make massive investments to make our buildings and homes more energy efficient, massive investments in wind, solar, and other sustainable technologies, massive investments to create energy-efficient transportation systems, massive investments to build the solar panels, wind turbines, and other technologies right here in the United States of America. And importantly, as all of you know, the workers in the fossil fuel industry, in the coal mines and on the oil rigs, they are not our enemies. They're working to feed their families. And that is why we will provide a just transition which protects the working families in the fossil fuel industry. If we are going to be honest about combating climate change, it is necessary for us to understand that we have an overall economy that is rigged and a political system that is corrupt. And this is an issue we just cannot ignore. A lot of people say, well, I want to combat climate change, but I don't want to take on the fossil fuel industry. That is not the way it happens. The truth is that right now, we have a small number of incredibly powerful billionaires who exercise enormous influence over the economic and political life of our country. That is why the President and Congress voted to provide $1.5 trillion in tax breaks to the top 1% and profitable corporations, while refusing to make public colleges and universities tuition-free or substantially lower student debt in this country. And that is exactly the same thing that is going on with the fossil fuel industry. Like the tobacco industry of 50 years ago, you all remember that? Well, I know you weren't born yet, but you read about it. I do remember it. And that is, you had an industry who denied under oath in Congress that cigarette smoking causes cancer and other diseases. And the fossil fuel industry is doing exactly the same right now. They are making billions and billions of dollars in profit every year. And then they deny what carbon emissions are doing to our planet. They lie and lie and lie and spend hundreds of millions of dollars to buy politicians who echo their lies. Now, this is what a corrupt political system is about. In the last decade alone, the oil and gas industry has pumped more than $700 million worth of campaign contributions into federal, state, and local elections. During that same period, they spent more than $1.5 billion lobbying Washington. And this is what we are up against. The fossil fuel industry has been well rewarded for their campaign contributions and their lobbying. An IMF report found that direct and indirect subsidies for coal, oil, and gas in the United States reached $649 billion in 2015. Maybe providing massive support, federal support, to an industry that is destroying our planet makes sense to some people, but sure as hell does not make sense to me. But it goes even further than that. As a result of Trump's tax cuts, nearly half of the Fortune 500 companies that paid zero in federal income taxes last year were in the fossil fuel and utility industry. Let us be as clear as we can be. It is time to end all subsidies and tax breaks for the oil and gas companies. These companies lied to the American people about the very existence of climate change and committed one of the greatest frauds in the history of our country. Just as the tobacco industry was ultimately forced to pay for the fraud they committed, the fossil fuel industry must be forced to do the same. We will not allow them to destroy this planet with impunity. So here is the major question that the American people must answer. How do we take on an industry with unlimited wealth, unlimited power, and unlimited resources? And here is my answer to that question. We need a political revolution. We need millions of people from one end of this country to the other to stand up and fight back to create environmental policy that works for all of us, not just the 1% and their greed. And that means not only fighting climate change, but ending the incredibly toxic environment that many low-income children and people of color are experiencing today. No, it is not a radical idea to suggest that clean drinking water and clean air should be the right of all Americans, regardless of their income or the color of their skin. Let me be very frank with you. The good news is, and it is very good news, is that your generation is the most progressive generation in American history. Your generation is anti-racist, anti-sexist, anti-homophobia, anti-xenophobia, and anti-religious bigotry. Your generation and Sunrise did not wait for an older generation to invite you to take a seat at the table. You took that seat. And you took that seat and you changed the conversation around climate change. That is the very good news. And you should all be proud of what you stand for and what you have already accomplished. But here is the bad news. The voter turnout for young people in this country, people under 30, is far lower than for older Americans. Thank you. In my view, if younger people voted at the same percentage rate as older people do, we could transform this country regarding climate change and every other important issue. So we've got an enormous amount of work in front of us. We have got to educate, we have got to organize, and we have got to fight for political power. Now, the 1% has unlimited wealth and unbelievable influence over the economic and political life of this country. But at the end of the day, the 1% is just 1%. Now, I may not be a Nobel Prize mathematician, but I do know that there are a lot more people in the 99% than in the 1%. So our job is to bring that 99% together Our job is to transform our energy system, take on the fossil fuel industry, and save the planet. Thank you all very much.
Wow, that was awesome. Woo. Wow, I'm emotional. It is such a pleasure of mine to be able to introduce you from one huge inspiration to another. A personal hero of mine, the author of best-selling books such as The Shock Doctrine and This Changes Everything. So if everyone could just give a very warm welcome to Miss Naomi Klein.
Wow. Thank you. Thank you so much, Varshini, and everybody at Sunrise and our incredible hosts here at Howard University. You know, as we struggle for the Green New Deal, one of the things we know is that we are going to change as we do everything that is necessary to stop the disastrous way in which the climate is changing, in which our planet is changing. We ourselves will be transformed in struggle. Our imaginations, our horizons, what we think is possible. And if you ever doubt that, remind yourself that here tonight, you saw Senator Ed Markey come out as a Democratic eco-socialist, if I'm not mistaken. Did we see that? I thought I saw that. All right. So let's start with the attacks, shall we? Here's a typical quote from a prominent Republican. This is despotism. This is tyranny. This is the annihilation of liberty. The ordinary American is thus reduced to the status of a robot. And then there's the oh so helpful advice from our so-called friends. Sure, you have some worthy ideas, but it's too much. We need to slow down, find the middle ground. Yes, every single one of these attacks has appeared relentlessly in major media outlets in this country in 1933, lodged against FDR's original New Deal. But here's the funny thing. They were spectacularly unsuccessful. As the original New Deal rolled out, its popularity grew and grew. And one reason for that is that, like the Sunrise Movement today, the New Dealers took their case directly to the American people. And they did it in lots of ways. But one of the most important ways they did it was through the power of art. Now, we got to be honest. The New Deal got a lot wrong. It left way too many people out. It left out many African American workers. It left out many immigrant workers. It left out many women workers. But when it came to art, they got a whole lot right. Tens of thousands of painters, playwrights, and photographers made publicly funded art that showed the reality of a country in profound economic and ecological crisis, from crushing urban poverty to the Dust Bowl refugees. And they did something else too. They held up beautiful and inspiring visions for a different kind of country. And unprecedented support for their art went to African Americans and indigenous creators, including Zora Neale Hurston and Ralph Ellison. Now, a few months ago, I called up my friend Molly Crabapple, the brilliant illustrator and filmmaker, to talk about whether something like that could happen again. a cultural renaissance for a Green New Deal. Because here's something we don't talk about very much. Art is actually pretty low carbon. You don't have to burn a lot of fossil fuels to put on a play. It doesn't take a lot of coal to get a bunch of kids together from the neighborhood and paint an amazing mural. Art creates jobs, it lifts spirits, it builds community, and maybe most importantly, it can help us imagine a different kind of world. One where we make bold and brave decisions to shift away from what we have today, which is what I call the gig and dig economy, which is all about taking endlessly from workers and the planet as if there is no limit, as if there is no consequences from all of that taking. We need to transform from the gig and dig economy to a culture and society and economy that is built on care and repair. Repairing our relationship with the natural systems upon which all of life depends, and repairing our relationships with each other, and that begins with repairing the harm and beginning to heal the wounds that date back to the original crimes of the founding of this nation, which is the stealing of African bodies and the stealing of indigenous land. That is climate justice. But a lot of us have trouble imagining that kind of huge transformation, that kind of deep transformation, and we shouldn't be surprised that we have trouble imagining that different kind of future, because we have all been raised in a culture bombarded with messages that there is no alternative to the crappy reality we have today, save with a few maybe tweaks here and there. From mainstream economists, we have been told that human beings are fundamentally selfish, gratification-seeking units capable of nothing more than seeking out our next consumer or dopamine hit. And you know what? Hollywood has let us down too. Almost every picture of the future we get is some version of the Mad Max zombie climate apocalypse. That's your second Mad Max reference for the evening. You know what? If we do get saved, it's usually by some superhero sweeping in at the last minute. Never everyday people like all of us banding together to save ourselves. And what Molly and I realized is that if we're going to win a Green New Deal, we're going to have to start telling different stories about who we are and about the kinds of futures that are within our grasp. And that's going to take art, lots of it. So we decided to get the ball rolling with a little film, and we raced to get it done for the first stop of this tour. It is the work of an amazing team, The Intercept, Kim Bookbinder, Jim Batt, Avi Lewis from The Leap, and of course, Molly Crabapple and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. In this time of rising seas and rising fascism, we think of it as a love letter to all that we have already lost and the future that is still ours to win. Thank you.
The bullet train from New York to DC. It always brings me back to when I first started making this commute. In 2019, I was a freshman in the most diverse Congress in history. Up to that point, it was a critical time. I'll never forget the children in our community. They were so inspired to see this new class of politicians who reflected them, navigating the halls of power. It's often said, you can't be what you can't see. And for the first time, they saw themselves. I think there was something similar with the Green New Deal. We knew that we needed to save the planet and that we had all the technology to do it. but people were scared. They said it was too big, too fast, not practical. I think that's because they just couldn't picture it yet. Anyways, I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's start with how we got here. 1977, New York. A senior scientist named James Black made a presentation about how burning fossil fuels could eventually lead to global temperatures rising 4 or 5 degrees Fahrenheit. Within 2 years, one of the world's biggest supertankers was outfitted with a state-of-the-art lab to measure CO2 in the ocean, gathering more data about global warming. Guess who was doing all of this research? ExxonMobil, the oil and gas company. Oh yeah, Exxon knew this whole time, as did our politicians. 10 years later, James Hansen, NASA's top climate scientist, told Congress he was 99% certain that global warming was happening and caused by humans. That was 1988, the year before I was even born. So did Exxon listen to the science, including their own? Did they change business models, invest in renewables? No, the opposite. They knew and they doubled down. They and others spent millions setting up a network of lobby groups and think tanks to create doubt and denial about climate change. It was an effort designed to attack and dispute the very kind of science they themselves had been doing. And it worked. Politicians went to bat for fossil fuels, and these massive corporations kept digging and mining, drilling and fracking like there was no tomorrow. America became the biggest producer and consumer of oil in the world. Fossil fuel companies made hundreds of billions, while the public paid the lion's share to clean up their disasters. We lost a generation of time we'll never get back. Entire species will never get back. Natural wonders gone forever. And in 2017, Hurricane Maria destroyed the place where my family was from, Puerto Rico. It was like a climate bomb. It took as many American lives as 9/11. And in the next year, when I was elected to Congress, the world's leading climate scientists declared another emergency. They told us that we had 12 years left to cut our emissions in half, or hundreds of millions of people would be more likely to face food and water shortages, poverty, and death. 12 years to change everything. How we got around, how we fed ourselves, how we made our stuff, how we lived and worked, everything. The only way to do it was to transform our economy, which we already knew was broken, since the vast majority of wealth was going to just a small handful of people, and most folks were falling further and further behind. It was a true turning point. Lots of people gave up. They said we were doomed. But some of us remembered that as a nation, we'd been in peril before. The Great Depression, World War II. We knew from our history how to pull together to overcome impossible odds. And at the very least, we owed it to our children to try. The wave began when Democrats took back the House in 2018, and then the Senate and the White House in 2020, and launched the decade of the Green New Deal, a flurry of legislation that kicked off our social and ecological transformation to save the planet. It was the kind of swing-for-the-fence ambition we needed. Finally, we were entertaining solutions on the scale of the crises we faced without leaving anyone behind. That included Medicare for All, the most popular social program in American history. We also introduced the federal jobs guarantee, a public option including dignified living wages for work. Funnily enough, the biggest problem in those early years was a labor shortage. We were building a national smart grid, retrofitting every building in America, putting trains like this one all across the country. We needed more workers. That group of kids from my neighborhood were right in the middle of it all, especially this one girl, Ileana. Her first job out of college was with AmeriCorps Climate, restoring wetlands and bayous in coastal Louisiana. Most of her friends were in her union, including some oil workers in transition. They took apart old pipelines and got to work planting mangroves with the same salary and benefits. Of course, when it came to healing the land, we had huge gaps in our knowledge. Luckily, indigenous communities offered generational expertise to help guide the way. Ileana got restless, tried her hand as a solar plant engineer for a while, but eventually made her career in raising the next generation as part of the Universal Child Care Initiative. As it turns out, caring for others is valuable, low-carbon work, and we started paying real money to folks like teachers, domestic workers, and home health aides. Those were years of massive change, and not all of it was good. When Hurricane Sheldon hit southern Florida, parts of Miami went underwater for the last time. But as we battled the floods, fires, and droughts, we knew how lucky we were to have started acting when we did. And we didn't just change the infrastructure, we changed how we did things. We became a society that was not only modern and wealthy, but dignified and humane too. By committing to universal rights like healthcare and meaningful work for all, we stopped being so scared of the future. We stopped being scared of each other, and we found our shared purpose. Ileana heard the call too, and in 2028, she ran for office in the first cycle of publicly funded election campaigns. And now she occupies the seat that I once held. I couldn't be more proud of her, a true child of the Green New Deal. When I think back to my first term in Congress, riding that old school Amtrak in 2019, all of this was still ahead of us. And the first big step was just closing our eyes and imagining it. We can be whatever we have the courage to see.
Wow, isn't that video just incredibly beautiful? I love it. Okay, y'all, I am so excited to have this rock star panel of young people who are literally changing the world in front of us here. And our friend AOC really got us kicked off on this conversation, but I wanted to gather these folks to discuss, how do we actually get this shit done? And I'll introduce our folks here. Peyton, right to my left, grew up in Detroit, where he developed a relationship with justice, race, and place at a young age. When he was just 13 years old, he organized a group of his friends and registered approximately 3,000 people to vote. That's amazing. He's a founding member of HBCU Climate Change Consortium. He's a social and business entrepreneur and is currently the executive director of the Coalition of Black Trade Unionists Education Center and the Michigan co-chair for the NAACP's Environmental and Climate Justice Program. Welcome, Peyton. Woo! To Peyton's left, we have Rihanna Gunn Wright, who is the policy director for New Consensus. I love Rihanna because every time I'm like, oh, wait, Rihanna, but how do we actually pay for it? She's like, I got an answer for you. Rihanna's the best. And to Rihanna's left, we have Alexandra Rojas, who's the executive director and one of the founding members of Justice Democrats and was part of the team that helped recruit and elect Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. And she was a huge leader in the Bernie 2016 campaign's distributed organizing team at the age of 20? It was unbelievable. So give a warm welcome to these incredible young folks. Okay, so I want to start with you, Alex. We just heard that incredible video from AOC, and you've been involved in AOC's campaign and in Bernie's as well, and your main arena of engagement as Justice Democrats is through primaries. So can you share with us a little bit of why primaries and why are they so important?
Yeah, thank you so much for having me here. I'm so excited to be here. Look at everybody. This is so crazy. I think primaries matter in the sense of look at where we are right now, right? I think back in sort of 2016, a lot of us that founded Justice Democrats first started off organizing as part of the Bernie Sanders campaign. And that was a big presidential primary, right? We saw this really clear, authentic messenger for talking about big solutions to some of the biggest problems that we face. And that was absolutely necessary to get things like Medicare for All on the agenda, to actually talk about climate change, to talk about taking no corporate PAC and no corporate lobbyist money. And so a lot of times, actually most of the country, 70% of the country doesn't actually get involved in competitive elections, right? They only vote during the general election, and especially in our democracy, that's a failure, right? We need to be able to get involved in the political process, specifically around primaries, to choose the Democrats that we want to ultimately champion things like a Green New Deal, like Medicare for All, like taking no corporate PAC, no corporate lobbyist money, free college, all of these things. And the only way that we're going to get champions is if we engage in competitive primaries. Otherwise, we're going to get Democrats that talk about the party of no, we can't, and not the ones that are going to champion the policies that are going to save our lives. So getting involved in primaries is absolutely imperative and is a huge part of our strategy.
Thank you. So, Brianna, a lot of people have been calling you one of the architects of the Green New Deal. I think it's well-deserved. Can you tell us a little bit about, like, what is the actual process for creating policy? We've created all this movement energy, there's momentum, and what does it look like to create the policy over the next couple of years?
So, to create the policy over the next couple of years, so I'm going to explain to you how policy is usually made and how we're trying to make the Green New Deal, and I think that will illustrate a lot of what's going to be different. And so policy tends to be made behind closed doors with a group of clever, generally white people, mostly white men. And then if they consult with frontline communities, it's after the policy's already been crafted, right? And what that means is that the compromises have largely already been made, right? The choices have been made about what policies are going to be in place, how they're going to be used, and what people they're going to impact. And so essentially, the choices about power relationships have already been made before they go into communities. And so the Green New Deal is trying to back that up. So the first thing is we released a resolution. Well, I didn't, but it came out. And that people came at us really hard. Why is it not spelled out? Well, the point is that it lays out what we need to do, and it's meant to create an opening so that everyday folks can engage in the conversation, right? So we move the conversation out from behind closed doors into the open. And so the next 2 years will be, New Consensus, we have this complicated policy process, but at the core, it's about keeping the folks who will be most impacted at the center and letting them shape the policy.
Yes.
And it's also about making sure that the folks who decide the policy are the same people leading this fight. Because what happens is that we talk about people being disposable. Well, young people are treated largely like, it's great for you to be activists, it's great for you to be in the movement, but once it comes to policy, get back, the real adults will come into the room. Well, we are the real adults. So a lot of the next 2 years is creating that space and honoring that space and making sure the people who are leading the fight are the same people writing the policy, and that we don't get kicked out of the back door, and trust these adults who largely have made no movement to now try to carry forward a framework that they still don't fully understand.
That's right. Thank you. And to Peyton, I mean, can you just tell us, I don't think a lot of people know, can you just tell us a little bit more about what CBTU does and also about your involvement in founding the HBCU Climate Consortium and why?
So my name's Peyton Wilkins. I was born and raised in Detroit, Michigan. I work for the Coalition of
What
Black
up, though?
Trade Unionists. There we go. Thank you. Appreciate that. The Coalition of Black Trade Unionists was created out of this mass meeting that happened in 1972, September, just following the elections from the previous year. 1,200 black folk got together, and they decided to acknowledge that their voices weren't being heard. I believe the president of the AFL-CIO at the time was George Meany. You guys can double check that for me just in case I am wrong. However, they felt that his neutral stand, in which I believe it was the incumbent Richard Nixon versus George McGovern. Does that sound familiar, folks? All right, cool. They felt that his neutral stance on this election was detrimental to them, that they had got ignored and left out of this process, right? So it created this opportunity for them to take greater steps to gaining leadership and a bigger voice within the union, right? So I think what's important about this is like, shit, it was 1972 and they got 1,200 people together without Facebook. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's an accomplishment within itself, right? So some of the work that I do with the HBCU Climate Change Consortium, it started, and actually Kerry Fulton was there when it started. We were in South Africa at the United Nations COP. It was in Durban. I think it was like 19 or 20. You remember what it was? 17. Thank you. What would I do without y'all?
Phone a friend.
For real. There were several of us that was at this table, and Dr. Beverly Wright, who was like the matriarch of the movement as far as I'm concerned, and Dr. Robert D. Bullard had this great idea, right, one time for the both of them, had this great idea that we needed to kind of consolidate the forces within HBCUs to work on this issue, right? There was this void within the movement where our voices was not being heard, wasn't being heard, right? And that became ever evident to us as we were moving through these spaces at the United Nations conference and realizing that, we're the only people that's trying to speak up for the community that we came from. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, totally.
Awesome.
Thank you. Thank you, Paige. And I mean, I'll stick with you for a second. So I'm kind of curious, like, for us in the room when we think about implementation, what are some of the major learnings that you have working with CBTU that might help us understand how we involve labor and people of color in the movement and in the process of implementing the Green New Deal?
I really appreciate Carrie saying this earlier, speaking to like the intentionality of diversity, right, and making sure that individuals are being brought in at the beginning. But I would be remiss if I didn't mention that we are very much so involved with the development of the Green New Deal, whether it's through other coalitions, other grassroots organizations, or the sister sitting right here next to me, right? But I think sitting in you guys' seats, what is important to understand is that we're constantly negotiating with folks, right? And it's difficult for us sometimes to, number one, separate the person from the problem, and number two, to identify our mutual interests, right? Those are two huge hurdles that we have to overcome. But what is absolutely intrinsic to making sure that we are involved in a way that's substantial is the education piece, right? And not so much a depositing of information where you as a teacher is working as like a bank teller and you're depositing information in me for me to give it back to you later. No, we need like an actual critical thinking, like a pedagogy that relies on a dialectic dialogue, right? So individuals can, create, and it's all about self-determination. And I'm gonna leave it like this, right? So.
Sweet. Thank you, Peyton. So, Rihanna, can you share a little bit about what should we actually be looking for from these 2020s? We've talked about that a lot today, specifically with regards to their climate platforms and the Green New Deal.
So I will say, I think you should be looking for three things. The first is intersectionality. If you are talking about climate and climate alone, you're doing it wrong. And if your plan can be executed by just the DOE, you're doing it wrong, right? And DOE, Department of Energy. I think the second is it needs to demonstrate a willingness to put the full might of our country behind this fight. So it has to be about an economy-wide national mobilization that is well-funded, that is led at the local level, but supported deeply at the federal level. And then I think the third thing you need to be looking at is scale, right? This is a problem. The next decade is crucial, right? It is crucial for us being able to have a healthy climate. And 2050, whatever timeline people choose, more time is not an excuse to maintain the status quo as long as possible. And so if you are seeing policies that say, oh, we're going to go net zero by this date, and there's nothing in the middle, that's a problem. And so you need to be looking, how is there a plan to get from here to net zero? Because whether you decide it's 2030, 2040, 2050, from here on out to move off of the energy source that we have used for over 100 years, it is going to be a sprint from now until the end. Every damn moment is a sprint. And that is what these plans need to show. So I would say look for those things, and there's lots of other things you can be thinking about, investment levels, but those three things are, so you need to be intersectional, you need to be talking about more than climate, you need to show a full commitment, and you need to recognize the scale, speed, and scope of which this needs to happen. And if those plans don't see that, push that candidate, or, you know, move on. I don't know, it's your choice.
Amazing. Thank you, Rihanna. And my last question to Alex. From your perspective, sort of electorally and politically, what do we need to do to win in 2020 and elect a Congress that's accountable to working people?
Well, I mean, first thing is it's going to take 2020 and beyond, right? This fight, even though we want to win it as soon as possible, at least in the federal level, we have to keep pushing and pushing. But for us right now, I mean, I used to think that we needed a completely new Congress in order to change everything, and we still do one day. But I think we've seen what happens when you can win one earth-shattering one, right? And completely shift the political landscape to make moments like this possible. And so I think as we look towards 2020 and why the first question that you asked about why primaries matter, a lot of what we have to do is tell the rest of the country that now is the time to get involved. Now is the time to elect Democrats that are going to fight for a Green New Deal, that are going to fight for Medicare for all, no corporate money, free college, $15 living wage, ending mass incarceration, ending mass deportation. That happens during competitive primary elections. And it's not, you know, enough, again, to be the party of no, we can't. I'm just curious, who here liked when Joe Biden said that he was middle of the road on climate policy? Boo, right? That means that right now, regardless of who you like during the 2020 presidential primary, you need to be pushing and making sure that every young person, every working class community is going out and talking about the issues that we care about and is electing champions. Because we've seen that when you combine not just sort of the electoral side, but working with folks like Sunrise and others to merge that with social movements, how much power it creates to make moments like this possible. And you know, I hadn't even realized until Varshini texted all of us that today literally marks the 6-month anniversary since we sat in at Nancy Pelosi's office. All of this was because all of you donated small dollars, you voted, you volunteered, you phone bank, you texted. All of that stuff matters, and we need to get the word out so that every single person that we know is with us actually gets out there and votes. So I'm going on, but it's so, so important to elect champions to office, and it doesn't take that much. It just takes people power, right? They have the money, but we have the people, and we have to keep going.
Amazing. Please give it up for Peyton, Rihanna, and Alex. Awesome. I guess it's just me and the chairs now. Sweet. Thanks, guys. That wasn't sassy, I swear. So, as Alex said, so we are in the home stretch here. Thank you for being with us. And 6 months ago, to this day, I was here in DC for a different reason, joining with the 200 young people who sat in at Nancy Pelosi's office. And for years, we've been told as young people, we're too young, we're too naive, we're too unrealistic. And on that day, we said, forget the punditry. We need to do what's necessary. And we changed politics forever. And so now I am super thrilled to share with you the next phase of our movement strategy. So our goal is for the government to get to work on the Green New Deal in 2021. And we think that this will require 3 things. 1, a movement of literally millions in the streets. Today is a good start. We need a House and a Senate on the side of climate action and a president who is ready to fight to get it done. That's right. In 6 months, we have done incredible things. If we keep up the fight and bring in tens of thousands of people more, can you imagine what we could make happen? This could be a reality. Imagine that. Because of the momentum that we've built, a lot of these presidential candidates are racing to back the Green New Deal. But other candidates have doubled down on the same corporate-driven policies that have failed us for decades, and they've continued to buddy up with fossil fuel executives who have jeopardized our future for decades. And this approach, straight up, is a death sentence for our generation. So here's what we're asking of every single presidential candidate. 1, they must sign the No Fossil Fuel Money Pledge and swear off oil and gas money forever. 2, they need to commit to make the Green New Deal a day 1 priority when they step into office. And 3, they need to join us in calling for a climate debate so that we have a chance to hear where all these candidates stand on this issue. So we're not waiting around. We're not waiting around till primary day in Iowa. We are giving all these candidates a deadline, and it's July 30th. That's the date of the second Democratic presidential debate that's taking place in Detroit. And between now and then is when a lot of these candidates will be developing their platforms and putting forward their plans. It's a crucial window of time. That's one of our best chances yet to hold all these candidates accountable to our vision. So let's take a step back for a second. Do you all remember how many questions were asked about climate change in the 2016 or 2012 general election? Yeah, big fat 0. And that is not okay. Because what gets talked about in these presidential debates defines what's the priority for the next administration. And this is the year we have to change the debate. So the first presidential debate is in Miami, June 26th and 27th. Put it on your calendar. For the first debate, we are going to host debate watch parties across the country and mount a massive wave of pressure online targeting candidates and debate moderators about the Green New Deal and the climate crisis. The second debate is in Detroit at the end of July. And at this debate, we will challenge every presidential candidate to meet with our movement face to face. We'll gather by the thousands and set up a people's stage near the official presidential debate location. This will be the largest action our movement has organized to date for the Green New Deal. That's right. And we are giving these candidates a deadline, July 30th. We're giving them 24 hours from the time that the debates start to meet the 3 demands I mentioned before. What are they? No fossil fuel money pledge. Green New Deal, day 1 priority. Climate debate, amazing, yes, killed it. And at this point, any of the candidates who actually meet those 3 demands can come and join us on this stage. So over those 24 hours, we'll tell our own stories, we'll hold vigil for the people and places that we've lost, and together we are going to continue what we started in November. And on the second day after those 24 hours have passed, we will take down the people's stage and we will know where every candidate stands on our demands. Leadership comes from the people. It comes from the grassroots. And when we come together, we can show that there is a force to be reckoned with, that there is a movement behind our demands. We need you. So if you want to host a debate watch party, if you want to throw down in Detroit, if you're not sure what you want to do, but you're like, this is kind of cool and I want to be a part of it, then I would love for everyone to take out your phones. This is the only time I'm going to ask you to do this. To take out your phones and text debate to 72345. Debate to 72345. Or you can go to sunrisemovement.org/change the debate. I'm gonna wait a second. All right, you got it? Yeah? Thanks, Havana's got it. I appreciate you, Havana. All right, who's ready to change the debate? So before we close out here, just one last thing. I want to have some real talk with you. I want to be real that the next few years could be the last ones to elect a government that is capable of protecting human civilization as we know it. How many of you feel the weight of that? Yeah, you're not alone. But it also represents our greatest opportunity because the people in this room could be the leading force that builds the political and the public consensus around solutions like a Green New Deal that will save millions of people's lives. So if we understand the science, then we have to make the Green New Deal a reality. And I also want to be real that our opposition is going to do everything to stop us. They will do everything in their power to squeeze the last bit of money out of the earth. They are already responsible for the deaths and destruction of millions of people around the world, and they sleep pretty comfortably at night on feather pillows in one of their many multi-million-dollar mansions. But there is too much at stake to not give it our best shot, isn't there? There are too many cultures and communities that may be lost. Too many people who may drown or burn. There are too many damn lives on the line to not give it every single thing that we have got. That's right. So I want to ask you, do you believe the science? Do you believe in justice? And do you believe in a better day? Then we must organize, and we gotta mobilize, and we gotta get everybody in this movement to shake the very foundations of this world. To those who sow hate and division fall, and a new day is born. And I want to ask, are you with me in that fight? Are you with me in that fight? So we might fail at all of this, but together I believe that we can do it. So will you join me in helping write the next chapter of American history together?
Howard, are you ready? Mecca, are you ready? Are we we ready to take back our future and take back our lives? Because that is what this fight is all about. Thank you for showing up. Thank you for fighting for our lives, and thank you for fighting for the generations to come, because we are not going to give up. We are not going to give up on the fight to decarbonize our economy, to make sure that we live a sustainable and just and provide and have a life and an environment that provides for all people, not just the privileged few. They gave me 2 microphones. I'm not sure why. Probably because I'm walking around so much. I want to thank you all so much for joining us today, because this is truly a call to organize. And I'm gonna transition here. This works. I want to thank you all again so much for showing up, because once again, this is a call to organize. This is a call to reorganize and to make sure that we are fighting for a just economy, for a just society, a just environment, and a just future for the United States of America and the world. It was reported today that this weekend, for the first time in human history, we have reached atmospheric levels of carbon at 415 parts per million. This has never been seen in recorded human history. In fact, meteorologist Eric Holthus and journalist said simply about this measurement and development, we do not know a planet like this. The last time our planet hit 415 was in the Pliocene period. Oceans were 90 feet higher. Bacteria and diseases we have never seen before roamed the earth. Humans did not exist. We have never seen a planet like this. And a planet like this is exactly what we are going to get. And it is exactly what we are going to inherit from previous generations if we do not act positively now. That is the simple truth. So often, when folks, particularly conservatives on both sides of the aisle, say, when they say that calling for a Green New Deal is, quote, too much or too extreme or too radical, no middle ground is right. Because I'm always curious, when they say that, oh, it's too much, what do they actually mean by that? Is 100% clean and renewable energy too much? Is fighting for dignified jobs that pay people enough to live too much? Is proposing a solution on the scale of the climate crisis to solve it too much? No. But let me tell you what's too much for me. Here's what's too much for me. What's too much for me is politicians looking and allowing babies' blood to get poisoned in Flint for corporate profits. That is what is too much for me. What's too much for me is coal barons coming up to Washington, D.C., demanding bailout after tax break after bailout for themselves, and then not even paying their own miners' pensions and put their own miners' health care. That is what is too much for me. That is too much for me. What is too much for me is the fact that ExxonMobil knew exactly that climate change was real and man-made as far back as 1970, and instead of being part of the solution, they paid millions of dollars to lobby and lie and confuse the American public about it, endangering generations to come. That is too much for me. What is too much for me is the fact that in 1989, the year that I was born, the year that many of us were born, and in years after and right before, that politicians were first informed by NASA, that Congress was first notified by NASA that climate change was going to threaten my life and everyone here's life to come, and they did nothing. That is too much for me. And I will be damned if the same politicians who refused to act then are going to try to come back today and say we need a middle of the road approach to save our lives. That is too much for me. We cannot, and we will not accept anything less than a solution to save ourselves, and that's exactly what this is. You know, when we talk about the path forward, I wish that as a leader, I could give you comfort about our future. I wish that as a public servant, I can come here and tell you that everything's going to be all right. But I can't tell you that today because I'm not interested in lying to you. But frankly, there is no reason for us to be comfortable right now. We are at 4:15. 4:15. There is no reason for us to be comfortable. And I'm not here to guarantee to you that everything will be okay. But what I am here to say is that we must try. We must try. I am not here to tell you that all Democrats are good and all Republicans are bad, and that if you simply elect someone with a D next to their name, that our problems will be solved. I'm not here to tell you that either. Because I've been in that chamber. I've been told from people on both sides of the aisle that we need to frack more and that we need to build more pipelines, both sides of the aisle, which is why, but that is why we need you. Because with your help, with your insistence, with your organizing, with your demands, with your voting, with your mobilizing a broader electorate than we have ever seen before in American history, we do not have to go down that path. Our history may be written, but our future is not. And we have every possibility in the world to change it. And cynicism about our future is exactly what the opposition wants. It's exactly what they want. They want you to think that it's too late. They want you to think that the future is pre-written. They want you to think that the power is too far imbalanced. And I'm here to tell you that all of those things are false. We are at a crossroads unlike any we have seen before. But the good thing is that the average everyday person has never been more powerful in human history than it is today. Never been more powerful. Between our abilities to educate ourselves, educate others, the abilities to win over our families, to have these conversations, to register and get people to the polls, to have people organize around issues, to elevate our collective consciousness about our racial history, about our nation's history, about our science, about everything that is bringing us to this moment. We have never been more powerful, and big money has never been weaker, and that is exactly why they are fighting so hard against the Green New Deal. We are at a precipice. We are at a critical precipice. And the reason why you hear constant disinformation, targeting, screaming, crying, storytelling about the Green New Deal is because they know how vulnerable they are. If they didn't, they wouldn't be doing this. If it really was just a silly little fairy tale, then they would have just let it rock. But they know the electoral and the knowledge and the actual organizing energy that is behind this. Because no one wants to leave a poor and worse earth for their children to inhabit. Not a single human being. And for years of denial and years of abdication of leadership and responsibility, we finally are stepping into that void, taking our future for ourselves, and we will change this country, and we will change the future to be more just. Because the logic that we are fighting against right now, this is not just about putting solar panels on our homes. We are fighting against a logic that says poisoning and giving communities cancer is okay if an oil company can post a Q1 profit. And we're here to say no more. What we are fighting against is a logic that says it is okay to pay someone less than they need to live. And we are here to say no more. And what we are also fighting against is a logic that says we can extract enough off of human life and our environmental resources to the point of destroying our own humanity just to post profit no more. We will not accept that anymore. We cannot accept that anymore. So lastly, what I'm here to tell you all is that while I am not here to assuage all of our fears, and while I'm not here to bring you comfort, what I am here to do is point to the possibility of our future. And if we act in that possibility, every day that we act in that possibility, we will have hope. And that is where hope will come from. Hope will come from our ability to act. Hope will come from our small actions every single day. And hope will come from us refusing to settle for less. Because for so long, this political paradigm that we have operated in has relied on us settling for less in order to, quote, win. And what that logic has gotten us to say settle for less in order to win caused us to lose 1,000 seats until recently the House, the Senate, and the presidency. And the idea that if we continue on that logic, that we will somehow win after years and years of losing is the definition of insanity. We cannot allow ourselves to be bullied out of our values anymore. And we do not have to be scared by demanding a living wage, by demanding health care for all people as we transition to an economy that is decarbonized, sustainable, and just for every American. But again, I cannot do this, but you can. We can together. It is going to take a level of organizing that we have never seen, but that is what we have been doing. We've already been pursuing levels of organizing that we have never seen. People say what is possible in electoral politics. People will vote for this. People won't vote for that. The turnout for the 2018 midterm primary was 19%. 19%. And everyone is talking about what is electorally possible. But here's another statistic. In New York's 14th congressional district, in that primary, we expanded the electorate by 68% over the last off-year midterm election. People will vote if there is something worth voting for. And a Green New Deal is exactly what that is. Thank you all so much. Let's organize together. Don't settle for less. And we are going to march to this future together. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Rep. Thank you so much, Representative, for the risks you take for us, for the courage that you show, and for pushing us to be more bold and courageous and compassionate through it all. Wow. I'm not even going to try to follow that up with anything. So I'm just going to close up this night doing what Sunrise always does, which is singing a song. So if we could get the house lights back on for one last time, and if everybody could stand up with me, and we could get the lyrics up on the screen. All right. Okay, so I need y'all to repeat after me, and we repeat each of the stanzas twice. And we can do this. I believe in you. So I'm going to teach it to you first, and then we're going to sing it all together. You ready? Here it goes. We gonna rise up till it's won. Rise up till it's won. When the people rise up, the powers come down. When the people rise up, the powers come down. They try to stop us, but we keep coming back. They try to stop us, but we keep coming back. Wow, you guys got it. All right, let's do it. We're gonna rise up till it's won. We're gonna rise up till it's won. When the people rise up, the powers come down. When the people rise up, the powers come down. They try to stop us, but we keep coming back. They try to stop us, but we keep coming back. One more time, like you mean it now. We rise up till it's won. We gonna rise up till it's won. When the people rise up, the powers come down. When the people rise up, the powers come down. They try to stop us, but we keep coming back. They try to stop us, but we keep coming back. They try to stop us, but we keep coming back. They try to stop us, but we keep coming back. Woo! Thank you, everybody. Thank you so much for being here. We will see you in the streets. Have a great night, and God bless you.